Welcome back to Heja Framtiden, the Swedish podcast on the future. Today we're going to talk about food waste. I'm sitting here with Philippe Schuler, Global Impact Manager at Too Good To Go. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You are from Luxembourg, based in Copenhagen, in Stockholm today to talk about your journey with Too Good To Go. What have you been discussing here today?
Yes, so originally from Luxembourg, but living in Copenhagen, where we have our headquarters as Too Good To Go. And today I spoke a little bit about the problem of food waste and also the solution that we provide as Too Good To Go, particularly when we're working together with businesses and pretty much our partners on how we can fight food waste together.
And what is your elevator pitch for your solution today?
So ultimately, at the moment, there's a lot of food surplus that ends up going to the bin, particularly from bakeries, restaurants, supermarkets. So that is beautiful, edible food that could have been sold at a price just before closing time, but because nobody was buying it, it ends up going to waste. So what we provide is a scalable, innovative solution that allows consumers to download an app, and with that, then go save a magic bag filled with beautiful, edible food that otherwise would have gone to waste. And it is really much a solution that is a win-win-win for the consumer, because they get a beautiful bag full of edible food, and they get to discover new places around their neighborhood. And of course, for the partners, they make sure that none of their food that they have cooked just before ends up going to the bin, and also make extra revenue from it. And the biggest win of all, I think, should not be neglected, is that we make sure that all food produced is also food consumed. And that's a big win for our planet as well.
And you said that the biggest share of the food waste comes from the consumers. So this is a way to use unsold food instead of buying more food to your fridge?
Yes, 100%. That's also one way of looking at it. Ultimately, at the moment, rightfully so, is that, as you mentioned, was that over half of all the food that is currently wasted in Europe is wasted in our very own kitchens, particularly because we overbuy. We look at date labels in the wrong way, and that ends up going to the bin as well. We basically fill our fridges to the max and don't really plan ahead when we go food shopping. And that leads to a lot of food going to waste at the end in our very own kitchens. Even if we don't want to waste a lot of food, sometimes the different circumstances lead us to waste that much.
I think many people sort of see food waste as a fringe problem, but you have a different explanation. Why is food waste so important to work with?
Food waste is so important, first of all, in terms of the impact it has on our planet, but also in terms of humanity. If you think about that, 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions stem from food being wasted. And at the moment, I think it also has a massive social dilemma in it. You know, that we, on one side, we have a massive amount of food on the one side of the world. It's the pure abundance. And on the other side of the world, there are people still going to bed hungry, which is, of course, a very moral issue. It's morally irresponsible to throw away that much food. And ultimately, you know, what we are really trying to do is to inspire and empower everyone to fight food waste together. You know, it's not consumers alone which will solve this issue. It's really a systemic issue that really involves every single actor in the entire supply chain. So all the way from production to consumption, where things need to change and where we really need to address this issue.
And Project Drawdown actually voted the food waste as a #1 solution to climate change. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, very surprised. Because if you look at the news nowadays, you know, all you hear about is solar energy, wind energy, electric cars, and rightfully so. I think they're very important solutions, you know, to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. But the biggest surprise of all was really when these researchers and scientists came together to rank these different solutions, was that food loss and waste was really the #1 solution, and to really make sure that we stay beneath the 2 degrees that was set out by Paris Agreement. And that is really a solution that will help us to mitigate all of these emissions and to combat climate change.
You say you have saved about 127 million meals now from being wasted, and your goal towards 2024 is 1 billion. How will you pursue that goal?
Yeah, of course, it's a very ambitious goal. I think we are a relatively new company in that sort of sense that we've started 6 years ago. So in the 6 years, we have saved over 127 million. We have now kickstarted our movement in 17 different countries across 2 continents. And of course, we're going to continue to spread our movement across other geographies, across other continents, across other countries. And of course, the more we spread that message, the more we inspire people to take action, the more meals we will end up saving. And this is really something that we are really ambitious about growing exponentially going forward, and to really bring food waste to the attention across the world.
Do you see any particular countries that are more progressive in this area?
Yes, I would say so. Like France, for example, I would say is a pretty progressive country in the subjects. And this started really from the attention it got from certain municipalities that found out that a lot of food was wasted in supermarkets. This was then brought to the attention on the national level, where they created the first law against food waste, which basically taxed companies that would throw away food that was still edible into the bins. And that really brought a lot of attention, in the media, but also in the consumer base to really act on this issue. And with that, it really pretty much created already its own movement inside of the country. Italy followed suit. Czech Republic did something similar as well. So there are more and more national laws against food waste starting to exist. They are not perfect. There's always certain loopholes, and there's a lot that we can learn from them. But it is definitely a step in the right direction, particularly in terms of raising awareness and getting the issue on the agenda.
But basically, you work with both restaurants and supermarkets. Which areas has the most potential, do you think?
I think there's definitely plenty of potential across both. We see the biggest growth for us in terms of supermarkets, because that is definitely a massive share of food still going to waste there, and they definitely lack solutions. I would say maybe the reason for that is that, restaurants, they produce their own food, so they know how much energy and how much sweat goes into it, while supermarkets, they buy produce, right? They are very far away from the production. So they're more prone to waste it because they're disconnected from where it's actually coming from. So I would say it's even more important to really inspire supermarkets and to make them aware of the issue, because they are further away from the reality and further away from the production.
And you mentioned food labeling, date labeling as one part of the problem. And Åsa Sandberg was here from the Swedish organization. I've had her on the podcast previously as well, so you can listen to that if you know Swedish. But she mentioned that the Swedish authorities will actually introduce a new kind of labeling now in May, right, in Sweden.
Yeah, so exactly. So we are launching our own date labeling initiative together with different partners across retailers and manufacturers. And the idea here really is to bring to the attention to people that a best before date has nothing to do with food safety. So that means, cornflakes or water or, even yogurts that goes to a certain date don't have to be thrown away at that certain date. You can easily open the yogurt, look at it, smell it, taste it before throwing it away. And that's really what we want to bring to the attention to consumers, that they should use their common sense and their senses to judge whether food is still edible. And what we basically do with those manufacturers and retailers is to adopt a pictogram that is then put on those products to really educate consumers to make sure that no food ends up going to waste. And rightfully, as you said, we're going to launch this initiative in May. And it's not something that just happens overnight. We're going to continue wanting to have more and more supermarkets and food producers joining our fight against food waste.
So basically, it's an extra label on the produce saying smell, look, taste, before throwing it away.
Yes, 100%. So it's just an additional pictogram that people can see and be educated by and be influenced by.
Good. Tell my wife. And you mentioned that this issue is not someone's fault in particular. It's a systemic issue, and you even said that the food system is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, but it's also a huge opportunity for the future. And collaboration and access to data and sharing data are two keys to sort of move forward. Do you see this happening? I mean, there were lots of interesting people here today just during this breakfast. Do you see more collaborations happening now?
I think we're on track to do so. I'm very optimistic that we'll make it work in terms of collaboration, because that's exactly what is needed. One solution alone and just focusing on one part of the system will not solve this issue. We really need collaboration. We need open dialogue between the different people, between the different parties that are involved. And I think that's the only way we will be able to solve this issue. Because as you mentioned, it is a systemic issue. It's not something that you can just point the finger at consumers and blame them for this. We really need every single one to do their part and to really be involved in making this happen. So I truly believe, and we have seen in other countries that this is possible, that we can move in the right direction if we are collaborating together.
We also need to take this issue to a higher political agenda.
No, 100%. Of course, the food system and the food waste issue is a political issue too. Still nowadays, there's a lot of legislation which leads to a lot of food being wasted. I give you one example with quality standards, for example, where still in the EU, we have certain standards or specifications that judge whether food is edible or not, just based on their appearance. So in terms of the color, the shape, or the way they look, that is basically how we judge whether food is edible. And that means that a lot of food still ends up going to the bin on the farm level and never even make it to the supermarket. So this is something, that really definitely needs to be approached. The labeling in itself, as I mentioned, is also still a legislation that needs to readapt it and revisit it. So yes, we need to speak with governments on a local, national level to really make this change happen.
Great. Thank you so much, Philippe Schuler from Too Good To Go.
Thank you very much.
And keep following us on the different social channels and hejaframtiden.se. And you can download the app Too Good To Go in the App Store and Google Play for the Swedish market. Åsa Sandberg gives the thumbs up. My name is Christian von Essen. Thank you so much for listening. And if you're Swedish speaking, please check out the magazine Framtidens hållbara matsystem. Next issue out in June. Thank you for listening.